get power now. This is gonna die. I just can't believe this is all really happening.
Is there some place I can plug into? Really didn't expect no power here. No power?
I don't know. I'm just. Where is it? Here we go. God, there's my man. Brought my power.
Right, please welcome Anthony Czarnik. His talk today is called No Infosec Staff, No Problem.
I just got LASIK. I have to use glasses now. See where my page down key is. I had to sacrifice short sight vision for long sight vision. But we only have 30 minutes at this point. We're down to like 22 or something. So I'm going to dive right into the deep end. And we'll talk about my theory and what could be your greatest challenge in terms of a root cause for information security failure. When I've interfaced with employees in IT, what I've noticed is if they have a primary responsibility, talking about proactive, smart professionals like you and I, they'll take that primary responsibility and they'll do research. They come up with a plan. They proactively attack problems before the problem even occurs. And then they'll monitor their plan and they'll update it. 180-degree difference when they have something outside of their primary responsibility. It's reactive, and things are taken one-off, and usually it's minimal time that they need to spend on something. Oftentimes it's not enough time. In our industry, that's a problem. If you're an IT leader or an IT whatever, and you're also responsible for information security, it's what I call you commonly suffer from secondary responsibility syndrome. What that creates is a scenario where you're not putting enough everything that's needed to really be effective. You may think that until you get breached, you may not be aware of it. Case in point, someone was referred to me, IT director told me, I got 3 problems I'm trying to solve. Can you write me a statement of work for it? Let's sit down. I talked a little bit about his environment, his organization, and then I learned that I would take a step back and I would do a risk assessment. He said, I can't. I only have enough budget for these 3 things. I know I'm still going to need to do them. I can't. We figured it out. What resulted was, out of the risk assessment, a roadmap that we agreed on. We agreed on a roadmap, which the bottom line is it was much different priorities than the 3 things he mentioned. And what was fantastic is because of the risk assessment, we were able to go back to the CEO and get an order of magnitude more budget. Because we proved how we were going to reduce the risk of IT, which was enabling the organization to achieve its business objectives. Another example in that case, third-party software. My IT director claimed the organizations in business, the stakeholders, they were responsible for security of those third-party apps. When I met with the stakeholders, they said the IT director was responsible. So in the end result, nobody was responsible, accountable, or even looking into that the third-party cloud applications they were using were actually secure. So my theory and the case in point, they're the drivers for this shortened session where I want to provide you with information about what could be potentially show-stopping challenges. Some you haven't encountered yet, and some you may not even be aware of yet. Now, unlike the IT director, I can't provide you with a roadmap today, right? Because your roadmap's different than your roadmap, different than your roadmap. But what I can and plan to provide you today is a travel guide that will make you aware of tools like compasses and maps, roadside hazards, warning signs, and I can also provide you with, for example, information, factors you should consider when you're determining your mode of transportation. You may say, well, I know I should drive a car and not a motorcycle. But have you thought maybe you should actually be taking the bus or a plane? Let somebody else drive. The top two challenges here, these everyone has. Small business enterprises, and what's really concerning are they're increasing at an accelerated pace. If I ran the sports book here at the Tuscan, I would give everyone here 3-to-1 odds that you don't even know all the third-party cloud apps that your employees are using. Dropbox, things like applications like that. It's a dynamic environment, considering that let's jump ahead here. Considering that the legacy perimeter as we knew it, it's really dissolving. I mean, we've now, at first, went from a computer data center to the internet, and now the whole world has access. Now, all of a sudden, what happened to the perimeter? We got mobile devices from our employees, our customers, our partners, accessing remote users. They could be using their own device or our company-sponsored device. Virtualization, it creates a blind spot. Now that system is really a network. How do you see inside of there? Complexity, it's like kryptonite for security. Let's take a step back. I jumped ahead here, trying to save time. But the risk is real. SMBs are being targeted. In one case, beyond just because it's an opportunistic attack, the security engineer that I trust on all types of security risk assessments, Dmitry Sneska, he's opportunistic in his approach to say penetration testing. And you got opportunistic attackers, they don't care who you are. They find an IP they can get in, they're going to go for data. So the risk is real. SMBs are being targeted. If you have partners as an SMB where they're enterprise and you're a way to get in to that enterprise. I'm a legal firm and I've got Boeing as my client. Who's probably got weaker security. Let's go after the law firm and go through and get Boeing that way. It's a really complex network. I got to move fast. It's not just time, but it's actually the bus routes, CTA routes in Chicago. Everyone's probably heard or seen some type of zombie movie, right? Dawn of the Dead was the first. I think the black and white. Basically, you know the storyline, even if you haven't seen one. You've got people, all of a sudden there's dead people coming back to life to eat them, and they're freaked out. And they're running, and all of a sudden they find some old house, right? And it's panic, and they get in, and they just bolt up the doors, and they board up the windows. And they take that first sigh of relief, and all of a sudden they hear some noise, like from downstairs. The zombies are at the cellar door. As an industry, the network and the operating system were where we were targeted. Those were the attack vectors. And we shored those up pretty well. And so what did the attackers do? Well, they found an area that not only we hadn't protected before, but it was more complex to protect because there's multiple layers. And developers, right? They don't. What do you think they get paid more for? For writing code that has functionality and performance, or for making sure there's no SQL injections? So the zombies are at our cellar door. And it's not just web applications. Blacklisting, it's not effective if you've got malware that keeps changing its signature by obfuscation. So it works the same, but it's a little bit different. All of a sudden, Barracuda and Sophos, and they're not detecting it. Picture this. You're in your office, the red phone rings. You know it's serious. Your number one web application, which is the revenue generating e-commerce. It's down to a crawl. So your entire IT staff is on it. This is primary responsibility now. It may be only you, but everyone's on it. Because there could be terrorists in your data center and you wouldn't even know it. But you know what? Again, I'm betting that there are terrorists, cyber terrorists. And what they're doing is that denial of service was a smokescreen. And while you're focused on fixing that problem, they're exfiltrating sensitive data. Social engineering, it wasn't that long ago, they were third world looking emails. That if you weren't brain dead, you'd realize that this wasn't really the IT department asking for your password. It's RSA. They got breached. The backbone of our security infrastructure through social engineering that leverage things like social media, where all that information out there. Know who your partners are, know who your suppliers are, coworkers. None of these are ways. Let's just get your users to a site that's attractive, and then we'll infect them there, and we don't have to get in. They're going to bring us with them. Consider that you need two very sort of like polar attributes for cybercrime. You need someone who's really, really evil. And you also need somebody who's really, really smart. Those two qualities aren't going to come that often. But you know what? What if you have the really smart people write the software and they sell it to the really evil people?
Why do you think that crime requires people? Not based on anything in criminology.
Okay. Yeah, I only got 20 minutes, but I think for philosophy, that's a great open. Me and you can talk about later, we really will. Okay. But if you're opening up, like again, we'll talk about it outside. Just watch out. Keep your wallet. You got all your stuff close by. All right. There's threat actors. They could be somebody who's out for political gain. During pre-NATO, the Anonymous took down the Chicago Police Department's website because they could. Money, power. A lot of people sell their soul for it. So the network's getting complicated, the attackers are getting complicated, and if you're SMB, you don't have, or counting a lot of people, you don't have money and you don't have the expertise. Look. Uh-oh. Hey, Dimitri, I got lost something. I got to get my glasses on. I hit end. I'm going to get right back to the PPT. I've hit the wrong button. Okay.
There we go.
All right. So, with that said, so we've covered those two things. I think the next thing I want to present to you would be how you can solve this. The first thing, consider and this is a really lame attempt on my part for me to remember to discuss the wrong way before we talk about how to do it right. But consider that the wrong way is lame, so maybe it really fits. If your security technology du jour is how I see the wrong way. Hey, what have I heard lately that sounds like a good idea that I should do? Right. What happens are too often if you do that, you overprotect, and I say you underprotect, or you overprotect and therefore overspend, or a combination of both. What the appropriate methodology is to see that IT is an enabler that helps businesses achieve their objectives, and that inherently to the IT is risk. And it's important to have security that will reduce that risk to an acceptable level. Therefore, you're supporting the business objectives. Therefore, you need to know your business, you need to know the objectives of the business, and most importantly, how does your information technology and systems support that business? Business aligned, it's consider that if you can get in ahead of the curve, you've got a lot more chance of succeeding in terms of a business case. Whenever there's an IT project, to be part of security, to be part of it, much easier to justify from the beginning. How do you start a risk-based approach? With a risk assessment. If you don't do a risk assessment, how do you decide where to invest your limited funding? How do you justify your business case? How do you justify that you're solving the worst risk to the business with what you're implementing? Simple formula. Find out from a high level, what are my assets? What's the threat landscape like? What's the probability, what are the probability of my gaps causing exploit, and what's the impact of that event? Now, my recommendation with a risk assessment is to ensure that you take an approach that's aligned, custom to the business. So use a standard framework, NIST, and I only have limited time. Afterwards I can show you. I've got some information I can have also on our website with major frameworks and methodologies. NIST, FAIR, Octave, ISO. Start out with a standard, and then I prefer to customize it, not just by itself, maybe blend a couple of the best parts of multiple standards. And then with a smaller business, it's not a security person on staff, work with the IT director, because they're going to have their challenges that it's going to be helpful for them. They're going to take ownership then. They're going to want to work together. So someone who does a risk assessment should be working with that lead person to understand the culture and how to make things happen. The number one output from a risk assessment, if you're still an immature security organization, is a formal program. Consider this is your blueprint. This is where all security decisions are made going forward. I know sometimes it's tough when you feel there's not enough time in the day. But take the step back and build a program that then, consider a blueprint what it does. After I have a blueprint, say for a building, if I need to make a change, the change I need to make at whatever level is I can see the effect to all the other components at that level or its other levels. Otherwise, you don't really know. Starts out, the framework is like say I'm going to buy a two-bedroom ranch or a condo. The policy is your foundation. And then the security controls, that's what you actually see, the house, the walls, the roofing. Again, offline, I also have papers on this. But policy, it's important. I know if you're a technologist, when I going to school with computer science, marketing, make it red and people see it. God, that's like too simple to even deal with. No, it's really important though. Like policy, someone comes in to check an auditor, you don't have policy, you're screwed. Then they're going to look at everything really, really deep and nail you. So you want to have policy that's really, then your security controls support that policy. They implement it, they enforce it. And what keeps that all together are procedures. You want your policies to be spoken like with enforceful language. We thought it would be nice, or do this if you can. You want to make sure that there's also a result. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen that's bad. Have your senior management approve it. Passwords, if you really like, there's a Verizon data breach with the FBI every year. There are a high percentage of breaches that occur because passwords, simple things like passwords were involved. Simple controls weren't tested. You gotta be kidding me. Hey, Dimitri, if you don't mind, please help me out. So we only got a couple minutes. So consider that, how are you then going to say, I'm telling you what you need to do, but how do you do it, right? There's two ways. You fly solo or you work with somebody. Maybe you have them do a lot of the work. One thing in terms of doing it solo, consider there's a ton of information that you're going to need. Core information like these NIST 800 series or ISO 27001, all this, that's your core you should do first. Secondly, there's yearly papers like the Verizon Data Breach Report. Michael Davis, he's got the security strategy. What are all your peers doing? I personally like to take them together and do a correlation. What's going on based on what people are saying, what they're doing, what's happening in the attack world, and what they're doing. Now, the trick to now is getting that subject matter expertise is to filter, because you don't have time to read everything that's out there. Got to find that filter that gets it to you. A lot of inexpensive tools that are available that you'd want to use. And again, I'll have a list of that for you, of those tools. A list of technical controls. Now, what happens if you put access control hooks up with encryption? What do you get as an offspring? You get a child that can travel securely on the network, on the internet. But these, I should go back, because this is real important. If you do these three things when you're doing security controls are most important. You want to do it data-centric. So take a look at your most important data through classification. Ensure that that data is secure through every layer of technology and everywhere it travels on a network. Holistic. Don't look at just one particular controller tool. What is the holistic effect of all my controls? Defense in depth. I hate getting sick. I wash my hands. I don't put my hands in my face. I take plenty of vitamin C. I eat. I sleep. Defense in depth. I mentioned security risk assessment. If you've never had pen testing done on your network, your web apps, that's a no-brainer. Okay, I've done all these things. What can someone who's got a really good mind, like an attacker, what can they really do? Employee security awareness, I mentioned that. I don't want to hit a button, but employee security awareness, I've had people ask, should I do training first or should I do an assessment first? I would, chicken and egg, I would do the training first, because if you never had any training, they're going to fail. One last thing, so if you go get help, there's two ways you can get it to help. One is to use a virtual CISO, right, where you're getting somebody who's going to do some leadership and help guide you and you work together, or you can use an MSSP, where they're your security operations. And they might often put that in the cloud, all your technology. So we really need to wrap it up. Apologize on the shortness on time, but and I had to go rather quickly. I think you got the major points. If you're in charge of delivering, like you're on IT, and you've got people using mobile devices, and you say, I don't know if we can reel that on the Kexner network. You can either get in front of the train and get run over, or you can grab the conductor hat, spend a little time learning, and drive the train. That's it. Again, I'm out of time.